This is your daily Facts Matter update, and I'm your host, Roman from the Epic Times. And now let's begin today's discussion by talking about the COVID vaccines. Now, you are likely very much aware of the large number of studies that have been coming out, let's say, over the past year or so, which have indicated that the efficacy of the COVID vaccines decreases significantly over time. In fact, some studies have indicated that the efficacy of certain brands of the vaccines, well, they fall completely off of a cliff in terms of preventing infection. However, wouldn't it be really cool if there was some kind of a real-world experiment that we can look at which models the absolute best-case scenario that government officials are pursuing? One in which you have, let's say, an isolated environment where everyone is 100% fully vaccinated, and that to even get into this environment, you have to test negative for COVID. That would be quite an interesting experiment, because that is what government officials are essentially trying to achieve in the broader society with all of their various mandates. And to that end, we are actually in luck, because such an environment exists on board of cruise ships. You see, to this very day, most cruise liners, for example, the ones that are run by a company called Princess Cruises, they require that all of their staff members, all of their crew, as well as all of the passengers, they must be fully vaccinated in order to get on the ship. And then furthermore, besides just being 100% vaccinated, before getting on board, everyone, meaning everyone that steps foot on the ship, must test negative for COVID. Then, going one step even further, once they are all on board, all of the crew members, they must wear a face mask. While the passengers, technically they're no longer required to wear face masks, but at least according to the website, they are recommended to do so strongly. And so, in theory, this is the absolute best case scenario in terms of what government officials are trying to push here in America. I mean, if the city of New York found itself in a similar circumstance, many government officials would think that it's mission accomplished. However, it's worth asking, what are the actual results? What happens on board of these cruise ships once these conditions are met? And as we've covered on multiple occasions on this program, well, it seems that time and time again, COVID outbreaks occur on board these cruise ships. And wouldn't you know it, just yesterday, there was another outbreak aboard a 100% fully vaccinated Princess cruise liner. Now, what happened in this particular case was that the ship, which for your reference is called the Ruby Princess, it left port in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in order to make a 15-day trip around the Panama Canal. And so, after leaving Fort Lauderdale, the Ruby Princess sailed to a port over in Colombia. It then sailed over to 2 ports in Panama. It then went to Cabo San Lucas in Mexico before finally arriving in San Francisco, California. However, somewhere along that trip, well, the fully vaccinated passengers began to experience an outbreak of COVID-19, such that by the time they actually reached San Francisco, multiple passengers, as well as multiple crew members, were testing positive for the virus. Here's, in fact, a statement from the Princess Cruise Company. Quote, "As with all Princess itineraries, this cruise is operated as a vaccinated cruise, as defined by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Guests and crew vaccination rates were at 100%. During the cruise, we identified some positive COVID-19 cases amongst our guests and crew members. They were all asymptomatic or only mildly symptomatic and were isolated and quarantined while monitored and cared for by our shipboard medical team." Now, the spokesperson for the cruise liner, they actually made a point of not disclosing how many guests as well as how many staff members were actually testing positive for the virus. However, there is a way that you and I can actually figure it out for ourselves. Over on the CDC's website, they maintain what they call a cruise ship status dashboard. It basically gives you a breakdown for what's happening with each of the many cruise ships that have suffered an outbreak. And when you look at the entry for the Ruby Princess, you'll see that the CDC marked their color status as being orange, meaning that at least 0.3% of the total passengers and total crew members tested positive for the virus. Therefore, assuming that the Ruby Princess was sailing at its full capacity of 3,782 passengers, as well as 1,200 crew members, that would mean that at least 15 people tested positive for the virus. That number could, of course, be much higher, but since they are not releasing the actual data, all you and I can do is surmise. And by the way, it's also worth noting that this is not even the first time that the Ruby Princess experienced this exact scenario in the year 2022. That's because back in January, the Ruby Princess likewise docked in San Francisco with several COVID-infected passengers after a 10-day Mexican cruise. Even if you haven't read these studies or heard about these cruise liners, it's fairly safe to assume that you've seen more and more people who are both vaccinated and then test positive for the virus. And besides the people in your own life and your own social circle, well, just in the last few weeks, there were a ton of high-profile cases like, for instance, Elon Musk. You had Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, the King of Norway, the King of Spain, Jen Psaki, you had the Prime Minister of Ireland, you had the U.S. Surgeon General, you had the Secretary of Defense, and so on and so forth. And given this reality, the official narrative surrounding these vaccines has largely shifted over the past year or so, from at first being touted as something that can stop infection and stop transmission, to now being more promoted as something which can stop severe cases and stop hospitalizations. And with a new Omicron subvariant accounting for over half of the new COVID cases here in America, well, the CDC has a plan. Just yesterday, they recommended a fourth Pfizer and Moderna vaccine dose for people above the age of 50. This decision certainly did not hurt the stock prices of those vaccine manufacturers. Now, in terms of their rationale for why exactly they're making this decision, which, by the way, they made this decision without consulting their committee of independent vaccine experts, well, regardless, though, the CDC cited a study from Israel as the reason why they're recommending a fourth dose. Here's specifically how one CDC official explained their reasoning for recommending this new shot. Quote, "This fourth booster dose is something that evidence that we have now from Israel suggests that by getting this, one can reduce the risk of hospitalization and death in this population of older individuals." However, you might be looking at this situation and you might be thinking to yourself, you know what, that's good, but I don't think 4 shots is enough. And you know what? You are likely correct. That's because just hours after the FDA authorized this fourth dose of the mRNA vaccines for all Americans above the age of 50, well, an FDA official came out and he said that a 5th shot may be needed in the fall. Here's specifically what Dr. Peter Marks, who is the head of the FDA center that regulates vaccines, here's what he told reporters just yesterday. Quote, "I don't want to shock anyone, but there may be a need for people to get an additional booster in the fall, along with a more general booster campaign if that takes place, because we may need to shift over to a different variant coverage." He then followed up on that comment by making a statement and expanding further on the possible future for the vaccine program here in this country. Here's what he said. "It may be that a decision is made that rather than what we currently have, the vaccines we currently have, which are called vaccines against the prototype virus, that we will move to a vaccine that is either against one of the variants, whether it's Omicron, Beta, or Delta, or something else. I can't say right now that's for discussion or whether it's some mix of different ones, but it's possible that people will need to get another vaccine." And so it looks like we have a lot to look forward to in the coming months. And by the way, regarding this topic, I recently published 2 awesome special episodes where I interviewed Dr. Peter McCullough as well as Dr. Robert Malone regarding this very topic. And in both of those interviews, we discussed in much greater detail how the CDC, as well as how other public health institutions, can actually reclaim public trust after what's happened over the last 2 years. If you want to check out those awesome interviews, you can find them over on Epic TV, which is our awesome no censorship video platform. I'll throw a link to both of those interviews, as well as the links regarding the Princess Cruise liner, as well as this recent decision by the CDC regarding the 4th shot. It'll all be down in the description box below this video, which is that little description box right below that like button, which I also hope you take a quick moment to smash. And now, let's switch gears just a little bit and discuss who exactly in America can legally qualify as being a human being. All right, I want to take a super quick moment and introduce the sponsor of today's episode, which is a phenomenal company called American Hartford Gold. They're actually my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. And so what I do, and what I've been doing for the last 6 years, is that I take this fake money, which is unfortunately being printed into oblivion by the people over in Washington, and I get myself one of these boxes from American Hartford Gold. Let me show you. Because what I believe, and by the way, I don't give you any financial advice, I just tell you what I do, is that, I mean, even before what happened between Russia and Ukraine, well, the price of goods across the country was skyrocketing, the price of gas was skyrocketing, and now with the conflict over in Eastern Europe, well, we're seeing what? The stock market being tumultuous, the price of oil's going to the moon, and we see gold and silver doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, acting as hedges against all these issues. So take a look at this. These are some phenomenal coins. I got some silver this month. Look, some Walking Liberty US dollars, beautiful. I don't know if you can tell how shiny and nice they are. Yeah, this is the real money right here. And what you can do is that you can order these for yourself from American Hartford Gold. They're a phenomenal company. They're great people, great staff. If you call them, not only are they friendly to work with, but if they ever have to put you on hold, well, they have Ronald Reagan's speech playing as their waiting music. So I never even mind when they put me on hold. And best of all, to our viewers, to viewers of Facts Matter, they have a promotion going on right now where depending on how much you buy, they will throw in a free ounce of silver for every ounce of gold that you buy. So calling them is a no-brainer. Give them a call at 866-242-2352. That's 866-242-2352. Or you can text Roman to 65532. And best of all, if you give them a short phone call, they can show you not only how you can get physical gold and silver delivered directly to your doorstep, but also how you can have it deposited directly into your 401k and your IRA accounts. They make the entire thing super, super simple. So give them a call. The number is, again, 866-242-2352, or you can just text the word Roman to 65532. I'll throw all that into the description box below. American Hartford Gold, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. Now, Roman in the studio, back to you. Now, while I was down in Florida about 2 weeks ago, I took the unique opportunity to sit down and speak with Ms. Tammy Nichols, who is a state representative from the great state of Idaho, and we discussed her effort to pass a bill which would officially delineate the fact that the legal concept of personhood can only be granted to human beings. Now, you might be asking yourself, what does that even mean? Well, take a listen.
A couple of bills we were discussing prior to the interview that you're working on that I think would be interesting to some of the viewers.
Sure.
Can you talk a bit about the personhood bill that you're passing
Yeah,
through?
so this is just getting through it's on the House floor here soon, and it's to define what personhood isn't. Now, that might sound a little strange, but what we are seeing happening is that we have the courts are making decisions on giving personhood status to inanimate objects, to nature, to non-human animals, and we're looking at possibly artificial intelligence as things progress. And the reason that this is a problem is that the environmentalists are using that to lock up resources. So they're giving status of personhood to, say, a bunch of trees or to a body of water. And then if there's any resources or anything on that ground, or someone wants to develop it or whatever the case may be, then now they cannot, because now that has personhood status. We've had animals that have been given personhood status. There's some on a gorilla, there's some on some hippos, and so we're kind of progressing down this road. So this is a proactive bill. We want to make sure that it's something so that if it does hit our state even stronger in the near future, that we already have things in place to be able to define that.
So has this happened before in another state where an inanimate object was granted personhood and therefore something was denied on that land?
So here in the United States, we don't have anything in that regard, but I believe it was in like Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, something like that, where they actually gave citizenship to a robot. And so now we're progressing. But I will tell you, Texas tried to open up a brothel not too long ago with robots, and they wanted to give each of those robots workers' rights. So we're starting to see those sorts of things play into our system, into our way of life. And, our children and our children's children, their rights should not be co-equal to a dog or to a tree or to a body of water. Our rights, given to us, and they are precious, and we want to maintain them, and they shouldn't be co-equal to things that are not human.
What other types of bills are you working on? I remember I was working on a story regarding COVID and visitation rights. I believe in. I think I was talking about visitation rights in the ER, but then I believe I read something regarding visitation rights in nursing homes, and I think your bill came up, or your name came up, because one of the things that was happening back then was that people's essentially constitutional rights were being discarded once they reached. Well, I think in this case the hospital, but also nursing homes.
Right.
They're being treated as second-class citizens. Can you discuss talk a bit about that?
So we had people reaching out to us during the whole COVID thing, and when our state was kind of in a lockdown, where people were in nursing homes or assisted living, and their family members, their friends couldn't go in and visit them. And we had people saying, my family member, they're so lonely, they're going into depression, they don't even want to live anymore, and we can't come and visit them at all. And so, we really heard people having a real issue with that. And of course, we wanted to help our most vulnerable population, our seniors that are in environments like that. And so Representative Julianne Young drafted a piece of legislation that I supported to make sure that does not happen in our state again, so that people are guaranteed in-person visits, and that their family members, regardless of any emergency, regardless of what the case may be, that they are guaranteed to be able to have in-person visits, because it's really important. It's important to their health. It's hard when you're getting older, and you don't do the things that you normally do, and when you're in an environment like that, it's important to have that in-person contact. And so we want to make sure that our seniors and our vulnerable population are taken care of.
Now, if you'd like to watch the uncensored cut of that interview, as well as those other two awesome interviews I mentioned earlier, the one with Dr. Peter McCullough and the other one with Dr. Robert Malone, I'll throw links to all of them into the description box below. And also, if you click on that link for Epic TV and use promo code Roman, you can get a 14-day free trial. So you can look at all the content, you can watch all the content, all the movies, all the different shows on Epic TV for 14 days without paying a single penny. And then after the 2 weeks, you can decide whether you want to continue or not, but you are under no obligation to do so. Again, that link will be right there in the description box below, and use promo code Roman. Then, until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epic Times. Stay informed and stay free.